arrangement. He had doors over there. He's put them all away.
It's a pretty cool setup he's got here, though. You know what?
Hi, everybody. Another edition of Tarter Source. Steve Tarter here in downtown Peoria on a hot summer day. And pleasure to have an old friend back, Paul Gullifor, the professor, not the professor, you're among other professors at Bradley University, communications, and you are the interim department head this summer, the summer of 2020.
Just for the summer, till August 1st.
Well, good. Well, that's so you
12 midnight.
You've been in that
Central Standard Time.
You're counting down, but you've been in that position before.
I have, yeah.
And Paul and I love to talk about changes in communications, but sometimes there's people like myself who flash back to an earlier time. They forget that things have really improved in some ways. Would you agree with that?
In some ways, the technology, I think, certainly improved. We were talking earlier about typewriters. We're not using those anymore. So in some ways, the technology has made more things efficient. But every technology, I think, has a trade-off. There's good and there's bad.
You started at Bradley in 1988, communications professor. Give us a quick comparison of what you were preparing students for then versus now.
It's kind of interesting, Steve. I mean, a lot of the things we still continue to teach. There's certain things that don't go out of style. Mm-hmm. What changes is the technology. What changes is the delivery systems. But, certain things like telling a good story. A good story is a good story. You know this better than anybody. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't matter really. The tools change. Mm-hmm. But, telling a story, recognizing a story. Some of the interpersonal communication skills that we teach, basic writing, reading, public speaking. I mean, some of these things just never go out of style, so we continue to teach those. Where we struggle sometimes is to keep up with the tools that change all the time. So each of those tools demands kind of a different technique and different way of storytelling, but a story is a story. So
now, this summer, now we all know about COVID-19. Well, we don't know. We're all under the pressure of COVID-19. Wish that we did know more about it. So that's turned the summer program into an online only. What is that? How do you deal with that? I mean, because I think most of us would assume college students are pretty savvy online, but what are the problems with that? The online only.
Oh, it's an enormous challenge. We actually started before this summer, so it was at spring break that the university dismissed and told all the students stay home and told all the faculty we're going online. So it was in mid-semester that we all had to transition. And what you find is some people are more prepared to take that transition than others. I mean, we have some faculty who are used to teaching online, and it wasn't a huge challenge. And then we have some who have never taught online who don't like to use email yet. I mean, so for some it was an enormous challenge. And we did have 2 weeks there to really prepare, and the university mobilized. They began to provide training workshops and those kind of things really quickly so that faculty who needed some additional help could do that. And it was a very quick, and for many it was a really painful transition. Mm-hmm. But what I always keep in mind about that is, as painful as it was for the faculty, it's more painful for the students. Can you imagine being a student who maybe has never taken an online class, mm-hmm. and most of them take 5 to 6 courses in a semester, and now to be told in 2 weeks, every one of your courses is going to be online. And by the way, all of your faculty might be using different tools, different software, different platforms in order to do it. So they have to learn, to start studying on 6 courses online and to learn the tools that each professor prefers within that course. Yeah. And I felt for them. I teach 3 courses, and I could move those online, and it wasn't particularly tough. But I do feel for students who suddenly, they didn't sign up for this. Right. And now all of a sudden, they're all online. And some of the challenges with that, you can't even imagine. Some students don't have internet access where
Right.
they are,
Right.
or they have poor internet access, and then all of a sudden, parents are home working from home. So now you have 3, 4 family members all on their Wi-Fi,
Right.
and they can't all get on, and they're taking turns, and some who don't have internet access are looking for it. They're going to, and they can't find it because they would ordinarily go to a Panera's or some place where they could have free Wi-Fi. And during a pandemic, they're closed.
Yeah.
So, and then you had students who had power outages. You had students who went home, and for some that's California. For others, it's India. And so the time difference now, and you're trying to work with a student from India who has spotty internet connection, and it's been a battle. And
What do you see coming in the fall? That hasn't been decided yet at Bradley, has it?
it has. Bradley has announced that we're going to be in the classroom.
Okay.
And so all the preparations are being made this summer. There's an awful lot of hard work going in at Bradley to make sure that we can provide in-class instruction while maintaining the safety of students and faculty and staff. And that presents its own unique set of challenges. But as of today, we plan on going fully back into the classroom.
But do you see now that with this sort of emergency transition, as you described, having been made in the spring, there'll be more online just moving forward because of that?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I think, everybody was forced to go online. I guess there's a good to that, so that if we have to go online again, we're better prepared for it if that happens again. And it may well be that the future of all education is going to be online anyway. I mean, the enormous efficiency and the scale of the internet, Steve, is just, it's hard to resist, even for academic institutions. It's, I can be teaching 20 students in a classroom. I can be teaching 20 million online at no additional cost to the university. I get paid the same, whether I'm teaching 20 or 20 million. Well, you can imagine how that can add up pretty quickly if you want to really scale something like that. So I'd like to, some people worry about that. Some people are concerned that now that we've transitioned online, maybe in the future we're just going to go online, no longer be a residential campus. I'd hate to see that happen, but I understand how it could and why it could, and there's certainly the financial incentive to do that. So, but as of now, we're planning on being in the classroom this fall.
I know I saw a Wall Street Journal story recently that said, front page story that I think two of their writers had put together, the America's online or remote education experiment was a failure. It was their sort of statement, and they ran through the things that I think we've heard a lot about, that some students didn't have access, some didn't have a computer, the libraries aren't open, things that you kind of mentioned as well in terms of talking about what happened when the pandemic shut down the schools. But I thought that doesn't seem quite fair, because here was this sort of, whether we're talking about grade school or college, everyone had to make this transition like immediately. And I talked to a professor that I had talked to some years ago when I was with the paper down in Springfield, who he did his first online class in '97. So he's been doing it for more than 20 years. He said, well, and naturally he didn't feel that was fair either. He said, there's a difference between remote learning and online, or whether you call online learning, online education. His point was, no one had a chance to really craft a class in, say, communications online. Maybe some did, as you say. Some teachers were already doing that. But for everybody, you didn't really have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And maybe now with more time, and I'm not saying probably the fall, but in the years to come, we'll see more structured online.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And it isn't fair. And, I read an article the other day where, an academic was making the case that if you're going to go online, two things have to happen and these are essential. You have to have widespread and free internet access for everybody. And the second thing is something I didn't really think about or put that much emphasis on, but they said, and everybody has to have really good, high quality headphones.
Oh,
And the case this professor was making is these students now go home into an environment where they've got the TV's on. You've got
dogs barking.
brothers and sisters coming in and out of the room. You've got pets. You've got air conditioners kicking on and off. You've got kids screaming. And just to find a quiet place in that home
Right.
where they can block out those distractions with a good set of headphones is critical.
That's a good point.
But you know, at times like this, I'm glad I'm teaching in college. How do you corral first graders
Yeah.
online? And I think you got to have really good parents to make that work. I mean, it really shifts the burden to parents.
And you know, I thought of that too with multiple kids. If you've got a family of 3 or 4 kids or more, and they're all young, that's, you know, and then you've got to work. I don't know how you do that. I guess you got to, you know, sort of develop a plan. But one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and it's something it's an online topic as well, and that's how things in the way of our local news has moved. Well, it's changed. How do you see local news changing? I'm going to make a differentiation between local news and national news only because we seem to have a lot of national, at least a lot of political news. I don't know if it's news is a good definition of that. Let someone else provide that. But local news where we know what's going on in central Illinois, more or less now than we used to.
Coverage? In some ways more, depends, you know, on the delivery system, but, you know, and you know this as well as anybody, is the financial challenges facing local news has really had an impact. And, you know, the thing that's kind of interesting to me is if I want local news, and I do, there's still really only 1 or 2 places I can get that from. So in an era of all of this technology and all of these cable networks and websites and everything else, really it's the PJ Star and some local television stations. That's about it. And radio doesn't pay much attention other than the public radio station. They don't pay much attention to local news. So in some way, my options seem really restricted. If I want to know what's going on in Peoria, Illinois, I don't have many choices there.
It is ironic because, as you said, at a time when we have so many channels and electronics are with us in so many ways, we can pull our phone out and find out what's going on at any moment. Yet, you know, as you say, unless we've lost an internet connection, you really don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a newsstand left in Peoria. I guess that you could say that about a lot of cities, probably, other than the major metropolises. But I know that I always heard stories about 2 brothers that ran a newsstand in downtown Peoria, and somebody listening or watching will know their names, perhaps, but I've not remembered them. But they made quite a fortune, I guess, from their little newsstand, and that's at a time when you were selling things for a nickel and a dime, you know.
Yeah.
So one time people really went after that stuff, and now I think there's a tendency to think it's free. You know, I pay my cable bill, I pay my internet bill, but as far as subscriptions or any of that stuff, well, you know, maybe HBO, but you know, it's expected to be free.
Yeah, and it's all electronic. It's all digitized. So, you know, look at a magazine rack the next time you're in a drugstore. There's nothing left. I mean, it's just they're all apps, and books are all moving that way. They're all electronic, and newspapers obviously have been migrating for a while. And that print, physical, handheld, papyrus version of media, it's kind of interesting. Back in the day, we used to talk about print and electronic media when there was a distinction. I don't think there's a distinction anymore.
Right.
There's no such thing as print. Even those that used to be print or still put out a print version also have a digital version along with it. So
I've always been fascinated, and I imagine it's out there somewhere. Somebody's probably done the research on it, and I just haven't read it. But the distinction between reading online and reading paper, or as you say, the text, kind of the magazine, whatever it would be, because I think we all read differently. I mean, everyone probably has their own habit, but when I'm online, you may be looking for a specific story, depending on the size of your screen. Whereas if I'm waiting in a waiting room or somebody gives me a paper, I'm flipping through it, I'm just sort of scanning,
Yes.
And I might light on something that I certainly wasn't looking for. I'm not sure why I'm even reading it, but I'm reading it. And I just think there's a difference there in how we take in stuff.
There's a difference, for at least for me, for our generation.
Yeah.
But I think what they're betting on is that this is going to resolve itself as young people get older. This generation is so used to reading everything online. It doesn't bother them, and it bothers me. I don't like the sequencing online. I don't like having to click on links instead of turning pages, and I never feel like I've read an entire newspaper online.
Right.
But I feel that way when I put down a newspaper. It's like I'm done. I went cover to cover. I don't know where the cover begins and ends online, but to this generation, they don't care. And, they're used to growing up interacting with that screen.
Right.
They love I don't want to interact. I don't. I mean, the most beautiful thing for me about reading a newspaper or watching television is that I don't have to work at it.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit there and choose camera angles on TV and all the things that they're promising now. To me, it's mindless and passive, and that's the most beautiful thing about it. But this is a generation that loves to have control of content and to push the buttons and see what they can make happen, and they're used to being interactive.
Yeah, that's true. I was just, when you were talking, I'm thinking of, I haven't done it a lot, but if you ever have to look up an old article on microfilm, and you can go to the library now and do this, and they put I imagine there's a newer version, but the one I remember is rolling it in and cranking it up, and then you scan this sort of old version of the paper, and depending on, of course, the quality of the reproduction, it sometimes is you're fiddling with the knobs, but you're not really reading it as you would if you had the paper in your hand, where you could just flip the pages, because I'm like you. I want it as easy as possible, but I have to search for it, and the page is now sort of wider than it used to be. There's a great deal of difference in finding things and in taking it in. So
It makes pages irrelevant for the most part, really.
Well, we're talking about communications. What is your feeling as the new semester rolls out? Do you anticipate this? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. Of course, we hope it's just down, 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 down. Do you think this is going to have a lasting impact on the students, this experience that they had this spring? Where the thing was pulled out, they're seniors, they didn't get a commencement, it was a break in the action, so to speak. Is that do you see that being prolonged?
I don't know. It's a great question, and I don't know. It kind of depends on whether or not this is going to be a temporary thing, and are we going to return to life as normal, whatever that is, or is this the way life's going to be from now on? I don't know, but I know students have had to make quite a pivot, and something interesting also happens with this is that some of them actually preferred the online. Some of them, some don't want to come back. Some have parents who don't want them to come back. They think that it's unsafe and would prefer to just keep studying online until they get their degree. Some can't come back. I have a student right now who's in India, and she's from there, she's home, and she wrote to me and said, I've got travel restrictions in my country. I'm not sure I can fly back to Peoria.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to accommodate me? Because I don't want to take the semester off.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, online options for her so she can continue making progress on her degree. I'll just say that it's been a major disruption. And academia obviously isn't the only ones feeling this, but it's just been a huge disruption for everybody. It's been a time of confusion and incredible uncertainty, Steve. It's hard to plan next month. We don't know. We don't know where COVID is going to be in August. We don't know if there will be a treatment available and how soon. We don't know if there will be a vaccine and how soon. We don't know if Peoria County is going to continue along the path or if we're going to see a spike. We just don't know.
And with that, you have to sort of, it's like you're playing defense. You have to kind of wait till you get attacked and then we'll respond. Otherwise, we're flying blind.
Well, you know what it does? It makes you plan for all scenarios.
Yeah.
It literally.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been told as faculty that we should be preparing for in-class instruction, but we should also be preparing for online in case we have to pivot to that during the semester. So faculty are working hard this summer, I have to tell you. They're basically, for every course, they're planning 2.
Right.
Because it's not as simple as taking the content from your in-class and moving it online. You have to reconceptualize everything you do in an online environment. And so it's really starting over with a class. So it's really, for every class, you're really prepping 2. But that's what we're doing. We're preparing for all scenarios, that we might start the semester online. We might start the semester in class. We may start the semester in class and then go online.
And
we won't know for a while.
And I know you are just mightily upset that you're going to have to hand off that department head title on August 1st.
I can't wait to see the face of our chair when he returns.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. Paul Gullifor has been our guest here, communications professor, Bradley University. Paul, it's always a great pleasure. We'll get to Notre Dame next time. That's a great.
I'm writing that down.
A great favorite set. Of course, they
may not be
I
playing
was gonna say,
football.
we don't know when they're playing, so
nothing to talk about.
it's a whole new ball game, literally.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, thanks again.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll see you next time on Tarter Sauce.
PeoriaLife.com